technology moves so significantly and quickly, we pretty regularly revisit the technology systems we have. And we're always looking to improve what we're using for our own internal efficiency and effectiveness, for helping us catch errors, but also for streamlining how we interact with clients. And because our clients are tech companies, they really appreciate, I would almost say require us to be using technology to work with them.
Hey, law firm owners, welcome to the Your Practice Mastered podcast. Today, we've got a super exciting episode. I'm your host, MPS, and we're joined by attorney Robert Plotkin. Super excited to have him on today, learn a little bit more about his journey, and also maybe get a bit of an inside scoop of technology and software, and maybe we'll see where Robert wants to take us, some AI and law, and how that may be changing the legal landscape a little bit. But Robert, first and foremost, thanks for hopping on today. Excited to have you.
Thanks so much, Michael. Thanks for having me here.
Of course. Hey, one of the things we like to do around here is break the ice a little bit. So what's maybe something that not everybody knows about you?
My journey into patent law and obtaining patents for software started when I was a kid. I loved programming. My first computer I worked with was a TRS-80 back in the early 1980s, programming in BASIC. So maybe people would know that. And my first computer at home was an Atari 800.
Nice. All right. So you had an early start to programming, huh?
Yeah.
What about programming caught your eye?
You know, the first time I wrote a program that printed my name, I was just amazed at the ability to write instructions that could control a machine and make it do what I wanted to do using words. You know, fast forward basically 40 years to the launch of ChatGPT. And it's so exciting to see the general public re-experience that kind of excitement of being able to use now natural language to not just ask questions, but give instructions and have tasks performed by a computer. That's what got me excited. Back then, you had to learn a programming language to do it, but that really started my love affair with computers that's continued ever since.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would love to branch into ChatGPT a little bit in this episode and maybe just AI in the legal landscape, but it's got me fired up. It's super exciting. I love all that you can do, and I think it could play a really crucial role for a lot of firms out there if they use it properly to increase efficiency and effectiveness and really just about every aspect of workflow in the firm. But I'm curious, so technology was kind of that first point for you, which is awesome. And I think you were starting at a good time because the ride of technology has only grown and grown and grown. But where did you make that transition into law?
You know, when I was in college, I studied computer science at MIT. When I started there, I thought I'd be going into a career in software development. But then I started to find I didn't think I was going to want to be spending my days in the depths of the details of coding. But I wanted to keep my hands in the technology world. I always loved writing, making arguments, that kind of thing. There were some people I knew who suggested law. It sounded really intriguing to me. And so I ended up going to law school. I knew I would be doing some sort of technology law. Didn't necessarily know it would be patents. But when I graduated from law school, software patents were just exploding at that time. And so I got a job at a patent law firm handling software patents, and that's what I've stayed with ever since.
Got it. And I know we talked pre-show, so I know you started working for a couple of firms and then you started to branch out onto your own. So why don't you take us through the high level or the high points of your entrepreneurial journey as a law firm owner?
Yeah, I did work for two firms for about 3 years. I mean, actually not all that long in the scheme of things, but I just had a drive, you would say, to do things on my own. I felt rightly or wrongly that I could do things better and that I was capable of doing it successfully. Maybe when I look back at it, I think is a little crazy, but you know what? It's worked out. It's worked out quite
Right.
and in patent law, as in many fields, you know, clients are working primarily with a single lawyer, whether they're working with a solo practitioner or at 1,000-person law firm, it's that one lawyer they're working with. So, I've built up my reputation on being someone who provides really high quality, personalized attention, and it's paid off. I mean, now I'm in a small firm, me and a partner, two of us, and we're planning to grow a little bit. But I know no matter what size our firm is, it's going to be that personalized attention that's going to be the value we have to offer.
And do you guys, given the interest level you have in technology, have you always been a tech first law firm? Have you always incorporated technology into everything you guys do?
Yeah, in fact, I was a solo practitioner for many years, always used tech, but when we formed Blue Shift IP back in 2017, we took that opportunity to build it as a tech first law firm, to revisit all of the technology systems that we were each solo practitioners, and we kept some of the systems we were each using individually. We replaced some of them, and we really did build it from the ground up. But, technology moves so significantly and quickly, we pretty regularly revisit the technology systems we have. And we're always looking to improve what we're using for our own internal efficiency and effectiveness, for helping us catch errors, but also for streamlining how we interact with clients. And because our clients are tech companies, they really appreciate, I would almost say, require us to be using technology to work with them.
That's very interesting that you say that because a lot of firms, as you know, at least consumer based, don't really work with tech companies. So it's more of a luxury, I think, if a firm has technology built in. If you're speaking to one of those firms that are kind of in that period right now where either they're new or they're in a bit of a rut and they're looking at technology and how it might be able to help the firm, I first want to ask, was there a crucial piece of technology for you when you guys were first getting off the ground that you're like, every firm cannot live without this piece of technology. You got to start here.
There's a few. Everyone uses email, of course, but whatever method you use to communicate with clients, that's really crucial. Email is still really dominant among law firms. Some firms do use other sorts of messaging like Slack or systems of that kind. But I guess the key thing internally is whatever you're going to use for file storage. I mean, that's an organization. It's
Right.
interesting that when you store things electronically, if you don't do that in a smart way, it can be harder to find things than
Right.
on paper. And although you might not lose things like you would on paper, if you can't find them, they're almost as if they're lost. So you
True.
need some method, whatever your file management or document management system is, you need to plan it out and use it that way. So those are the two things. I would say document assembly for
Mm.
law firms is really key. It's a very old technology, for creating documents, but so many law firms like ours, our bread and butter is creating documents
Right.
and creating many forms, whether it's to clients or to a court or for us, the patent office. Being able to create and fill in documents, automatically, reliably is just super important for efficiency and to keep the firm running. I guess those are the three.
Yeah, no, I mean, all essential, right? I mean, they all play like a foundational role in technology for a firm. And you're absolutely right on the file search. When you don't have good organization of files, it could be a pain trying to dig through and find stuff. And you're right. It's almost like if you wrote it down and forgot where it is, as if it's not there. We've
Yeah.
experienced that before. So I get that.
And I'll say one other thing, because I'm still, I would say, amazed when I speak to lawyers who aren't using some sort of automated timekeeping
Mm,
system.
yeah,
There's so much out there. Everything's available on your smartphone. If you happen to be a lawyer that's out and about all the time, I happen to generally be at my desk, so I can use desktop software, but I never write down time manually. I'm always using software with timers to track my time, record my time, and then we can generate invoices automatically. I still speak to lawyers who say that generating invoices is a real burden for them. It's time consuming, they lose time. There's really no reason for that to be the case anymore with all of the integrated timekeeping and billing systems out there.
so many tools out there to be able to start using that. I agree with you. I mean, it just takes a pause moment, right? Where they just have to
Mhm.
pause and be willing to look and find one and just start to implement it. And although
Yeah.
it chews up a little bit of time, investing in research, the moment you do it, you start to gain back some of that time from an invoicing front and from a time management perspective.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I think that's really helpful. And look, I know when we were talking pre-show, A big part of this show is kind of speaking to the business side of law too. And so I'm curious, in your journey as a law firm owner, they're usually called a journey for a reason because there's highs and there's lows. What was along that path, maybe a low point, and what's something you took out of that point?
Yeah, a key one was, I would say, after a few years as a solo, I started to strain under success. I was growing, I was taking on more and more clients, I was doing more and more work, getting busier. And as a result, I started to take on more expenses. I
Mm,
was hiring people, I got an office, so those fixed costs started to go up, time needed to supervise. And I realized at some point I am working more and more, I am billing more and more, but I'm earning less somehow.
mm,
How did that happen? So it's a common problem, right? I always say you can fail from failure, meaning you don't get enough clients, you don't bill enough, and you just fail because you're not pulling them. But you can fail from too much success, which is you can't manage the growth. And if
yeah.
you don't know how to manage the growth, you're going to fail from being too successful in that regard. And that's where you need to have some ability to learn how to manage the business. And this is going to maybe be a theme for the remainder of this conversation. For lawyers, that doesn't mean you have to personally learn how to do it on your own. Lawyers have a mindset that they need to be the problem solvers. You can hire a manager. I've worked with a business coach for many years. In fact, the impetus for doing that was this situation about 5 years into my solo practice was, I don't know how to get out of this where I'm working more, generating more revenue, but having lower profit. And I hired a business coach. So, lawyers out there, it's not failure to reach out to other people.
No, I mean, wow, you just brought up several really big topics within that, which is, we don't often talk about the other side of the coin, right? And the other side of the coin being there's growing pains involved when you do grow. A lot of firms are figuring out, how do I even get to that point? But some firms don't consider, okay, when we do get to that point, do we have the systems and structures in place to be able to
Yeah.
facilitate the growth? So you said you brought on a business coach, which I'm sure brought some practical implementation, which is great. And I think being able and willing to reach out is helpful. I'm curious, what led you to actually take that step of reaching out? Because you brought up a really good point in that lawyers really like to figure out how to do things on their own, which is not a bad thing, but it's usually very tough and it's a big chasm for them to cross to be able to reach out and ask for help. So what did that for you? What led to you being willing to do that?
As I said, it was me reaching the point of just like looking at the numbers, seeing that I knew I had skills as a lawyer. I thought I was a really good lawyer. My clients are really happy with me. But there was another aspect to what I was doing, which was the running of the business, where
Right.
I had reached the limits of my skill and ability. I went to school as an engineer, computer scientist, and a lawyer. I never went to business school. None of those places taught me how to run a business. And so I realized maybe it was some degree of humility or just the pressure of the situation that pushed me to do it. I don't know why I do speak to some other lawyers who aren't able to make that mental leap. And some of them end up going back to a big firm or to some other situation, where they don't have to have that responsibility of managing the business side of things. So I can't say what caused me to do it other than that. And it turned out to be a really good starting point that was 15 years ago. And I've been able to grow the business, change the scope of it and the structure of it in various ways over time. And that was really helpful.
No, I think you're spot on. I think you get to a point where, reality hits, right? And you have a choice, right? You have the choice to either you have a couple choices. You can reach out for help and try to figure out how to grow and grow profitably. You can decide to keep it small and keep it all and kind of wind things back a little bit. Or, for some lawyers, it's canceling it all and just going back and getting a job, right?
Right.
So everyone has that choice to make. From a practical sense, like I said, I know you reached out to a business coach. What is one practical thing you did as you started to grow and you hit that point? Like, what was one of your first steps to try to solve some of that growth?
I mean, none of it's rocket science. I think when I remember, one of the first things my business coach had me do was just look at the revenue and look at the expenses and take a
Mm,
really, really close look at all of those things. Do some triage, right? Where's there low hanging fruit on expenses that can be cut? Where's there low hanging fruit for some big additional revenue that can be brought in? And then another thing we did, which was something that somewhat came to me naturally, which was look at the systems. You mentioned systems,
Mm,
and I say somewhat came to me naturally because I am an engineer by training. I like thinking about designing systems, but we started looking where are the ways in which we can make things more efficient in how the business is being run. Some of that was through technology, some of it was through updating procedures, documenting procedures. There was a lot of that. So it was a mixture of all of these different things. And I'll just say one more thing, which is
yeah.
that maybe in the past, and say 30, 40, 50 years ago, lawyers were in a fairly fortunate position that they could charge enough, that there wasn't a lot of competition, the rates were high enough, and they could solve these problems just by, I would say, spending more, get a bigger office, hire more staff, and things would kind of work out in terms of earning enough profit to keep the business going. Everyone is under so much more competition now, domestically, internationally, from outsourced legal services, from use of technology. Lawyers are no longer in that luxury position, I would say, to just solve these problems by throwing money at them necessarily. And you actually have to know how to run a business efficiently, much like many other businesses do.
It's very refreshing to hear that because we oftentimes, when we first meet with a firm, most lawyers don't necessarily see their practice as a business. And I'm curious for you, when you started your practice, did you always see it as a business from the start, or did you kind of reform that mindset as you were in it?
Yeah, I definitely reformed it over time. When I started, I saw it as Robert, the lawyer, providing services to my clients.
Mm.
And the change happened gradually. I actually remember my business coach, one of the first things he did was share a book with me. Maybe you've used it or heard of it. What's called the E Myth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons he shared it is it tells a story of a business owner. And I think they used someone who makes pies, not a lawyer, because it's a very common trajectory. Someone who has a specialized skill, they're really good at doing something, and they decide, let me do this as a business. And I'm going to start selling my legal services, my pies, whatever it happens to
Right.
be. And then they reach that point that I reached, which is they're grown to the limit. And so it was, I would think, I say, refreshing in a way, normalizing, validating to see there's nothing wrong with me in a sense. I didn't do anything wrong. This is just the normal process of growing a business. And when you reach that inflection point, it's true for any business. Here's the things you need to do. And so that maybe was the beginning of starting to change my mindset to see what I was doing as a business. And I need to structure the business so that I'm working within that business. I'm one part of the business, but I am not personally the business.
That's a very refreshing mindset. Yes, and that's very good. And was it during that same period of time, is that when that mindset shift started to occur for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, for lawyers, there can be a bit of a challenge. Maybe ego isn't the wrong word, but you have to find a way to let go of a certain attachment you might have to having sort of control over everything or seeing yourself as the top of the business. That's almost, I think lawyers cling to that as a way of seeing themselves as valuable when actually in practice it's really limiting. It limits you from growing more and from growing the business. Actually even limits you from being able to have control over what you spend your time doing within the business, right? If you don't start seeing it as a business that you're structuring and then you have a role within it, you're going to, I would say, doom yourself to always having to do everything. And unless that's what you want to
Right.
do, and I would say, like metaphorically, licking the stamps on the envelopes that go
Yes.
out the door, right? Or the digital equivalent of it now, you have to start seeing it as a business. Then you can free yourself to doing within the business what it is you want to do or are best at doing within that business.
You put that very eloquently. I mean, to your point, you really can't achieve personal and financial freedom from your firm until you start to view it as a business because you'll forever be in every role. And it's just difficult to achieve that freedom point because if you're wearing every hat, that means you're likely putting in a significant amount of hours every week. And it's hard to ever escape that, right? And achieve the freedom
Yeah.
point. But I tip my hat to you because it sounds like you made that shift and you made that move, which is awesome. One thing I was very curious about coming on today, usually I see people in the two camps with this one. I see from an AI perspective, I see some that are like, no, this is just another thing. It's a phase, it's not that big of a deal. And then I see some people that are like, no, this is fantastic. This can really be a lucrative tool. I'm really excited about this. Which one of those camps do you fall into?
Yeah, I am in the it is really valuable and real as long as you understand its strengths and its limitations, and you spend time developing the skills to use it effectively, efficiently, and responsibly. It's like
Mm,
any other tool. People forget that when the web started, people had the same debates about Google and Wikipedia. There were lawyers who were saying, I'll never, ever use Wikipedia
right.
because it's not 100% accurate. There is a valid point within that,
Mm,
which is that when you go to Wikipedia, if depending on the purpose you're using it for, you may need to verify its accuracy. But that doesn't mean you would never use it for any purpose. And you can find lots of inaccurate or just irrelevant information on Google. And of course, those lawyers who back in 1994 said, I'm never going to use it, either went out of business or they've
right.
changed their minds.
Mm,
And the same thing applies to AI. It's a bit more extreme with AI because a tool like ChatGPT, I would say, can produce output that is more almost deceptive. It may appear to be more valuable or reliable than it is because it can be more directly responsive to what you asked it for.
right.
It looks as if it's a really knowledgeable person when it isn't always. But again, that doesn't mean just like Google or Wikipedia or a spell checker, which even a spell checker is not always accurate. Sometimes I
Right.
have it correct it's and put an apostrophe in there when it's wrong, right?
Right.
But it doesn't mean I don't use them. You have to know what they're good at, what they're not good at, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and how to get the best out of them. And it's the same, actually, the same with AI. It's a somewhat different set of skills you need to learn, but if you can learn them, you can make really good use of it.
So there's a million and a half different use cases for AI right now, right? But you're talking to firms out there that are trying to understand it and try to understand where it can play a role in their firm. Where do you see AI fitting in, at least from an initial sense, in a law firm? Where do you see its highest and best use right now?
Yeah, and I'll try to speak as generally as I can because
Sure.
we're a patent law firm, but I'll
Right.
speak generally beyond that. It's very good now. And when I say it, most of us, when we talk about AI now, are talking about chat GPT
Yeah.
like systems, things based on large language models. It's quite good at summarizing large documents. Again, as long as you understand the summaries may not be 100% accurate. But just like if you had an assistant, you say to them, tell me what the gist of this 100-page document is. And you know that the summary they give back to you, its purpose is to spare you the time of reading the whole thing, to give you a good general idea of what that document is about. These systems are really good at that. They're good at often rephrasing things in a different tone to be better suited for a different audience. For a lawyer, that might be you've written something that a lawyer would understand and you want to rewrite it in a way a client would understand. It's really good for those kinds of purposes, rephrasing. There's some really good tools out there now for doing contracts analysis. I mean, what a bane of lawyers' existence to review a really long 100-page contract to find out if there's a clause missing. It can do a good initial pass for that kind of thing, make suggestions for what might be missing, what you might want to add, what you might want to remove from a contract. Searching, again, it's not completely accurate, but in my field of patent searching, there's an increasing number of really good tools out there for finding search results. In all of these cases, it does the initial job. As long as you don't rely on it blindly, it can be really valuable for all of those purposes.
That's a very good way to put it. And I think you've still got to double check, right? It's always important to double check. I don't know if we're at the point where it's quite there that you could 100% rely on every little
Yeah.
thing. I think we still have to double check. And obviously, the big question I hear a lot of time nowadays is firms that choose not to adapt or adopt AI in any way. Do you find that to be troublesome? And do you think that could be potentially dangerous for those types of firms? Or do you think we're at a point still where it's not that big of a deal? And if they never adopt AI, they're going to be fine?
I think their time is going to be limited. It may vary depending on the field that the firm is in or who
Sure.
their clients are. But over time, there's going to be more and more pressure on lawyers because there's usually two different directions that it comes from. Either a new technology enables individuals or companies to start essentially substituting for lawyers. Think of LegalZoom, right?
Yep.
There are services that enable people to engage in self help, provide the equivalent of legal services to themselves without hiring a law firm. That's one direction. The other direction is that law firms will be facing competition from other law firms that use AI internally. So those two competitive pressures are going to build up, over time more and more and more. So there'll come a point at which, those firms who don't adopt AI think are going to be at a real disadvantage. When will that happen? Is it going to be this year or 10
Right.
years or how is it going to play out? I don't know, but it will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's something that every firm should at least start the foundational blocks of implementing and learning and starting to understand it. So that way, as it continues to evolve, because that point will come, I believe, they're ready and they're prepared and they've already got it started to rock and roll in their firm. This has been really good, Robert. This has been very valuable and helpful. I always like to ask, what's got you fired up and excited today? It could be business, could be personal, could be both.
Yeah, it's AI. And really, for us, it's about obtaining patents for our clients on the new innovations they create within the world of AI. Because we're patent attorneys who obtain patents for software, we're working with clients who are improving on AI technology all the time. And so it's very exciting to work with those clients. We're getting to see new improvements to technology well before they hit the market, and we're working with clients to obtain patent protection for those technologies. So that's super, super exciting for me. I'll just say that I've been working with AI and its impact on the patent system for a long time. I wrote a book about that in 2009. It was
Wow.
called The Genie and the Machine. It was about how AI was being used to automate the inventive process and the
Uh-huh.
impact of automated inventing on the patent system. Not that many people paid attention to that book back then. So it
You were a
is
little
it
early. You were a little early,
yeah, I was a
right?
little early. I thought I was about 5 years too early, but I was off by another 10 years probably in my prediction. So it's edifying, it's validating, and it's really exciting now to be living this out right
Yeah.
now and to be working with clients doing this.
And I'm sure you get, and I know we talked a little bit about this pre-show, but I'm sure you get to see a lot of really cool technology and software come across your desk. And I can only imagine what's in the pipeline of getting ready to come out with as quick as stuff is moving. I'm sure you've got some fun stuff in that pipeline.
Absolutely. And for lawyers out there, we talk about adopting AI. Remember, the AI you see now is where it is now. It's improving all the time. And all those concerns that lawyers have about accuracy and everything else, technology companies are working very aggressively on addressing all those things. So it's another reason to do what you said. Start getting the groundwork in place now, because a lot of those concerns you have as a lawyer may be addressed in a year or two. So you'll be ready to jump on it. And if you don't, your competitors are definitely going to jump on it.
Well said. Very well said. Well, Robert, this has been very good. I appreciate you sharing this. I think there were plenty of lessons to pull from in this episode between you and the firm as a business, which happens to become or happens to be a trend in this show. We see a lot of that transformation of lawyers that go from practice to viewing their practice as a business, and also the other side of growth, which is growing and getting the growing pains and learning how to handle that. And of course, AI and how AI is changing the not only just the legal landscape, but the landscape of the world as we know it to an extent, which is very fascinating. It's exciting. I'm sure for some it's probably a little bit scary, but I think it's ultimately going to be used for a lot of good and a lot of progress and momentum in our culture. So I'm excited for that. But thank you for taking the time to invest with us today. This has been awesome.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And In case anyone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm at linkedin.com/in/Robert Plotkin. I post there all the time, and then you can message me there, or you can go to our website at blueshiftip.com and reach out to us there.
Awesome. And to the law firm owners listening, thank you. Thank you for investing your time and being here today. This was an awesome episode, lots to pull from. And if you have any questions or you just want to show Robert some love down in the comments, make sure to go ahead and do that. And then hit that subscribe or follow button and turn those bell notifications on, depending on where you're listening or watching from. But we appreciate you. Thank you for investing your time. And Robert, thank you again.
Thank you.